And that was a pivotal moment for me to go, if I can't even die on my own terms, then I need to learn how to live. So learning how to live, I had to literally really just crumble and just surrender and go, how do I do this? What do I do? I didn't even know what love was or living or how to interact healthily. And I'm still learning all of that. But that was a pivotal moment where it's just like, okay, I can't die. I have to stay. There's a reason for me to be here. I don't know what it is. And it's like, okay. So from that unlearning and then relearning, that's where I've developed, a lot more insight, a lot more self-compassion, a lot more wisdom. I've written the books around that. My online courses is all about helping the individual come back to themselves and to see that, we are, at the end of the day, just born pure love, because that's where we start from. Life happens. Crappy lifestyles happen. We're misled by the media. Humanness is really about learning to unravel all the rubbish that we've been taught through the dogma and just come back to love and see each other from that space.
For the longest time in America, those that suffered, that have the highest rates of completed suicides have been affluent white men, affluent white males. And in America, affluent white men, when you think about socioeconomic status, I mean, being a Caucasian male doesn't automatically make you rich, of course, but we're talking about affluent Caucasian males, highest suicide rates. And so that lets you know right there, because if you're affluent and you're a white male in America, then that means you're top of the food chain. You're top tier. The world opens up and answers to you, but yet the suicide rates being the highest. And, with me saying that, let me ask you, why do you think that is?
I think it's because we feel like such a failure. We're sold the image. This is what success means. This is what love represents. You get the accolades, you get the stage presence, you get the awards, you get the money. And we're taught that at such a young age. That's the goal. In Australia, it used to be get the house. That was the goal of every parent, was to buy a house in the suburbs with your quarter-acre little bit of land, the greening, all the rest of it. And if you didn't do that, then you're a failure. If you couldn't provide a home for your family, then you're just insignificant. And it's these ideas that we're sold the image, but we're not sold how to attain it authentically. Being true to ourselves. And self-actualization, as we've been taught from psychology, is really getting up to the food chain level. It's the achieving success and maybe not necessarily feeling good about it. But when we start to unravel it, for me, self-actualization is actually coming full circle back to purity, back to self-love, coming back and going, okay, I have, yes, maybe achieved success in my head, not everyone else's, but I'm very happy with who I am. And that being self, being I, actualized, I've actually achieved what I have set out to do. So it can be different for everyone. Definitional misunderstandings is a huge problem. So your definition of a word and mine, if they're not understood, actually, because you've asked the question, what do you mean by that? And the person can articulate it, then we can just go off into tangent and say, well, I disagree with that because that's not my definition. It's only when we do start to talk and have dialogues and ask questions about, what does that mean? Then we can go, oh, yeah, I can actually see where you're coming from, and then have more peace with each other and ourselves.
One of the biggest things, just real quick, one of the biggest things I tell people, or rather I confront people on, is say, I want to be able to forgive, Well, I say, okay, well, if you want to be able to forgive, then first tell me, what is forgiveness? Because you got to know what it is if that's what you want. Well, it's when you when you let go of stuff. Okay, what does it mean when you let go of stuff? Like, what are we talking about here? I mean, here's the thing. People, they say things, but they don't give much thought to it. It's just words, and
Mhm.
so when you look up, when you're intentional about going after what it is that you want, I said the definition, and I was intentional about looking up the definition of forgiveness, is to relinquish your desire to see the person that has caused you harm punished. I have to know
Mhm.
that if I want to forgive, so then that highlights the fact that, oh, I haven't forgiven because I still want that person that has caused me pain punished, period.
Mhm.
So until that is gone, I will never be in that space of forgiveness.
Mhm.
And so you're right, these words, these concepts, these symbols that we use to communicate to one another, they are definitely important.
As a society, it tells us what to think, what we should be feeling, the rules of life, what we can, what we can't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what different races can do, what different colors, different grading of materialism, what car is suitable for you. And it's just all these things that we should be doing. So when we internalize that, it becomes our belief system. We actually take on other people's expectations or structural paradigms from our parents, our siblings, the school system, society, the culture, even the era that we are born into has its own theme of what we can and can't do. And so it tells us from subconscious out, this is what we can and can't do. And it's the limiting stuff. How many kids are actually really encouraged to believe in themselves and go, you can do this, without the false idea that everyone has the ability to be the piano superstar, and not say, okay, you can do whatever you want, but it will still need to have the practice. And you will have some strengths and you'll have weaknesses. And helping them to cope with the reality that everyone is good at something, but you also need to respect where you come from, as in what gifts and talents you've been given, not from the social classing or the background or old money or things like that. It's like, what are the gifts that you've been given? What have you been blessed with? And then using that to actually fulfill your destiny, your life purpose.
what I've what I said is that we must move from what we've inherited back to what it is inherent to us. And the things
Mm.
that we've inherited are based off of fear. These rules, these structures, these beliefs, they are fear rooted.
Yeah.
And so we must move from what we've inherited based off of fear back to
Mhm.
what is inherent. And we also have to extend compassion to the other, as much compassion as we would like to receive for ourselves, because the other don't realize, yes, it's during childhood and it's mainly parents, for most people, that indoctrinate their kids with this fear-based reality. But it's
Mhm.
par for the course for human beings, because first we love and then we fall in love. Think about anybody out there who's just given birth, and if you have your infant with you, looking at your infant, think about how much you love your child, how much
Mhm.
you love your baby. Men, how much you love your child, your baby, your infant. And first comes love, and then we fear losing that which we love, and we respond to that fear. And so that's where you get a lot of superstitions from parents to children, where you hear things like, you children should be seen and not heard. And so now you're being
Mhm.
taught that your voice is invaluable. I mean, that doesn't have value. Rather, these little things we begin to pick up and inherent. What if
Mhm.
your voice? What if your gift is to speak? But your entire life
Mhm.
you've been told that you should be seen and not heard. Now you have to fight through what that limiting belief that you've inherited to go back to what is inherent to you, so that you could become empowered and then become what I
Mhm.
say is lit up for life, which is living in your truth. That's how you become
Yeah.
lit. If you're living outside of your truth, no matter what that truth is, if you're living outside of your truth, then you're not living. You're merely existing. And there's a difference between merely existing and living.
We need to forgive our parents, because they really were only doing what they were taught or what were they expected themselves to be doing as parents. And if like, I feel like I screwed up my kids, I'll be honest about that. But when I look at where I was emotionally, mentally, how empowered I was at that time when they were babies, I have to give myself forgiveness, because I really didn't know other ways of being. Not being present, not being mindful, not being going, okay, what does this child actually need from me at this moment? And especially if they didn't have that attentive care as children, then they don't know how to give it. Parenting is learnt, but it's also from the restriction of what they were given as children. And that's the twist point, I think, of this generation, is that more parents are becoming aware, and there's a lot more talk about emotional intelligence from a parent's point of view to support children to come through. And
Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, that's okay. You can agree with me. But it's so, it's so critical. And this is what I'm loving at the moment. This generation that's coming through, they are wiser. They're old souls, and they're bringing so much more love, and they're more accepted. Well, in Australia, there's a whole generation that's coming through that are being celebrated and encouraged to be authentic, because the parents have realized through psychology, social fatting, that they're going, oh, that's why I'm so screwed up. Let's not perpetuate this. Let me learn how to be a better parent. And they're doing the courses, they're learning the ways, and the children are growing up to be different.
Yeah, somebody has to break the cycle. And as far as giving our parents breaks and extending forgiveness to the other, what I would like to encourage, besides what my sister said, what I would like to encourage you to do is to extend forgiveness to yourself first. Because if you fill yourself with forgiveness, then it has no choice but to spill over to the
Yeah.
outside. Understand that no one leaves childhood unscathed. I will say that as a psychotherapist, even though I'm not in that capacity on here. But no one leaves childhood unscathed, and parents do the best that they can. As far as I'm concerned, I have to do two best parents on the planet. Were they perfect? But name one. No, they weren't. But name one perfect person in existence. We are perfect imperfection, and much of the harm, if not all of the harm that's been caused to us, it's caused to us based off of ignorance. Because if they knew better, they would do better. But because they don't know, that's why they did what they did. And so understand that we are ignorant of so many things in this life. And so we're going to need forgiveness as well. And so why should we forgive the other? Because there's so much. They only did it to us out of their own ignorance. And by hurting us, they don't realize that they hurt themselves at the same process.
Okay, so in my mind, it creates freedom, because the beliefs, the limiting beliefs, create the prison, the mental prison. It's the constructs of how far we can actually go. So when we dismantle the bars or the chains or whatever, we've allowed the emotional entanglement to go with those beliefs, the shutdown, the disassociation, the disconnect, the avoidance, all those strategies out of the fear or unworthiness, or that we're not good enough, or we can't talk to people, and the isolation that comes with that. So when we untangle and we free up these limiting beliefs and turn around going, okay, I can actually do this. It feels lighter, it feels freer, and then we're more able to do what we want to do. And we have less negative emotions attached to things, so we raise our vibration. We actually feel lighter, we feel happier, we feel more content.
The ultimate goal, I believe, is to answer that question, who am I? That's the whole reason why we are here. In my opinion, we're discovering more truth about who we are via these experiences. But understand that in this place of isness, where everything is and nothing is not, nothing exists without its opposite. So we not only discover who we are based off of things that represent us, but we also recognize who we are based off of who we are not in the experiences that do not represent us via the pain. And there's a difference between pain and suffering. Much of our suffering is self-chosen. But understand that when that experience, especially when we talk about traumatic experiences, when a traumatic experience, a painful experience happens to us, understand that you are not that experience, that you are not your story, that the closest thing to who you are your values, And so what's true for you in that space is one of the most important questions that you can ask yourself, because the pain is meant to be a teacher, not to condemn you, not to shame you. And if you are experiencing shame, understand that we are attracted to things that we like, which is why we find partners that have similarities, and friends who are similar to us, and we take if we're in college, we take subjects that are of interest to us. Everything that we like represents in some form or fashion who we are. No one likes their shame. We're repulsed by our shame. And so understand that your shame represents not who you are, but who you are not. But the universal code is, the law is, whatever you stare at becomes your reality. And so if you continue to stare at your shame in disbelief, eventually your identity, the mind will merge your identity with your shame, and then you will define yourself based off of said shame. But your shame is only a place of unawareness.
So our beliefs are self-talk imposed on us that we've agreed to take on at various stages of our life. So then really questioning, why did my mum say that? Why did my religion say I can and can't do that? Is it inherently bad or good? And I was thinking about this morning. Everything really is just is. It's only when we judge it and label it as good or bad that it is so. So it's like having self-awareness and going, okay, what's actually going on in my head?
But it's everything is a process, and who you become in the process is more important than the destination, because the process is designed to define and refine who you are, reshape and help you to understand who you are, so you can operate in that truth. And once you begin to operate in more truth of who you are, you become even more empowered.